How you doing? The weather. This is spring in Kansas City. Early spring. Still technically winter. Let me hook my mic up like a professional. Actually, if I were professional, I'd run it up the shirt, but gotta run. This car is coming on fast. Oop, missed the light. Alright, I'm going up Mean Street, which, and I'm streaming much better because I've unhooked that dongle. I think that dongle may not be working very well. Cheap, which isn't that cheap. But today is the beginning of March Madness, the big basketball tournament that happens here in other cities across the country. College basketball tournament. And last year, on, what is today? March 10th? Last year on March 12th, when it began, it was also the beginning of people's realization that the beerfluenza epidemic, the worldwide pandemic, was a serious thing, and it was going to affect daily life on a very fundamental level. I don't know what's going on here. These people and their confusing array of mazes of cones are trying to cause everybody to have a wreck. But the story goes that last year they had the first day of the opening day of the tournament. Things seemed to be normal, but everybody was talking about how the whole thing shebang was threatened by the epidemic, but I don't think anybody really took it seriously. And I don't know what exactly sparked it, but what happened was the ruling body of the whole thing called a press conference and said, and everybody knew this was a mess. News story, and it wasn't going to affect your life. This was something that was real and was going to really mess everything up. So this year they're holding it, and it's still the kind of like very delicate situation. I believe what they're saying is they have 20% participation by fans. Everything is spaced out, a lot of safety protocols. But you know, if there's an outbreak, one of the teams or whatever has an outbreak, you know that the whole thing could be canceled again. And it's significant because, you know, this, like many other sporting events, are big economic factor. They're going up. You know, a huge chunk of my problem again, and I'm going to come back to talking about this. It's something that should never be tolerated from any American corporation, and I've made my feelings very clear about this. right now we're having a 30% drop rate, and some people might consider that a passing grade, but I don't. I think companies should be graded on their performance. And if you fail in your performance of your basic daily quality of the goods and services that you offer, don't expect to then walk into the federal government and say, hey, we want to be your service provider, because the federal government should make a grade and use that grade and say, well, if you don't meet our criteria, we don't want you. You know, everything else in life is graded in that way. And why do companies which want to pretend they're people get to fail in the way they do? Well, because they spend so much money bribing the people who should be protecting us. Alright, got a piece of emergency equipment coming up behind us. Looking for a place to go. It's a police car. I don't have a very good place to go. And this person with the paw prints on her car seems to be oblivious to what's going on around her. But this is very typical of March weather. Actually, this has been so far a very warm, pleasant beginning of March, and that happens often. We have a saying, in like a lamb, out like a lion, which means that if March comes in with nice weather, then it'll be pretty crappy weather when it leaves, or vice versa. I hope that's not true. But a lot of times March will give you false hope. Sometimes even into the end of February we'll have very warm, pleasant days, and we'll start thinking about spring, and then boom, you know, the weather will change back to winter. And sometimes some of our worst winter storms happen in March and even into April. And you know, usually early spring is kind of gray and bleh. And it can be this way for about a month. And then it starts, finally, when the flowers and leaves start coming out, everything starts blooming, then finally it really starts feeling like actual spring. We have noticed a few of the little flowers in our yard are coming out, which, you know, is another sign that it's really here. Trees are budding. And, you know, spring in Missouri is spectacular. It's one of the most beautiful times to be in this state. We have some very pretty flowering trees. Look at these, are sprouting here. Red, and these will be covered in flowers, I believe. Liberty Memorial through this maze. Now, if this were a normal March, this city would be buzzing with activity because of the tournament. There would be tons of cars, rented cars, you know, with people from out of town, completely lost, trying to go left where they can't, and all right, which way do I need to go? You know, They really need to do better with their directions. They're going to cause wrecks. And I have seen quite a few people go the wrong way on this street. And look at this. Left arrow. And I'm not going left. I definitely can't go through there. So yeah, this will be a very muted tourist time, but at least they're having something. I mean, I'm not a sports fan by a long shot, but even I am thankful for a little bit of normalcy. And we are actually going to pass through the area where it's all going to be held by about 2 blocks to the west. When we get into downtown, just as we get into downtown, everything to the east will be tournament territory. You know, they've rebuilt, redesigned. It was a legacy project of which mayor was it that got the ball rolling? I think it was mostly Kay Barnes. And you know, it was, and what's the name? Sly James was the one who presided over the city when everything was being rebuilt and improved. And if you can call it an improvement, some people would, but it's costing a lot of taxpayer money. And it's like building a party district with taxpayer money and then charging high interest because it's not really paying for itself. Some people would say, oh, well, it is paying for itself. Well, I don't know. I wish I could get into that kind of opportunity where people just give me money and say, But they've completely rebuilt the southern part of the downtown loop. Hotel developments they're building here. The battle cry was Kansas City needs a 1,000-room hotel, a new convention space, and this and that and the other thing. It's a political party. Big. My service tournament territory, and very muted. It is approaching a level. Did this poorly in school, and they would ask me. They would probably advise me to drop out of school. Literally. Still getting an F, barely getting by. Alright, now we're at a high C. Just barely doing average work. And like I say, I would put the utilities in Texas out of business. No, you absolutely will never do any work for the government. You let the people of Texas down, you and government and the people should demand better performance. Let's just say if these utilities down in Texas were a car, it would be a Yugo on on concrete blocks with doors missing and the engine ripped out. But they expect you to charge you like it's a Rolls Royce for doing nothing, for letting people down. And for the politicians who let them do it and come up with every excuse in the book why they should let them do it, especially certain politicians who have had a long history of being self-serving ass hats. I think that Texas voters should know what to do. They had the opportunity to get rid of that creep, and he barely hung in. You know, that's the power of corruption and gerrymandering. And these are the first people yelling that there's corruption and voter fraud going on. Yeah, there's voter fraud going on. People are not allowed to vote. They're being denied their franchise. They're being denied their choice, and then they're paying for it, some quite literally with their lives. Truck is always pulling in here. Now that we've come out of the city, the ISP is doing better. We've come out of the high usage area, but I still don't excuse this kind of failure ever. You know, I've been a customer of this company, and now they've the company I was a customer of, which I don't know why, it wasn't ever that great, forced to merge by, you know, whatever, poor leadership, I guess. Merge with a bigger company, and I expect that the service quality will start crumbling even worse, because that's the nature of things. You merge these companies, become a huge company, they fire and lay off huge chunks of their workforce, expect the rest of them to do 2, 3, 4, 10 times the amount of work. Pay goes down, but the profits go through the roof, which is the end goal, and then the quality and service goes to hell. And all of it gets approved by the non-existent federal regulators, because, you know, the people we put in Washington are supposed to be looking out for us, or looking out for their own self-interest. And then we wonder why the economy is so crummy. It's kind of like if you had an ecosystem and it goes out of balance, because that's, you know, an economy is basically an ecosystem. And by out of balance, I mean you allow the all the little organisms to be swallowed up, and then all that's left are the big giant predators. Well, what are they going to do? There's nothing left. They're going to eat each other, I guess. And then when you have nothing left but these big predators, then everything dies. That's a nice looking transit. I don't know how good transits are. I know the Mercedes are pretty darn good, pretty hard to beat. Ford makes the Transit, and I always thought that Ford was copying Mercedes, because Mercedes has a successful design, it's kind of taken over the world. The truth is, though, I think it's the other way around. I think the Transit actually came first in England. Transits have been known to be very reliable, and they kind of, you know, you think the Mercedes has taken over the world, the Sprinter van, but the Transits actually did. They're all over Asia. The Chinese love them. I don't see too many of them in the Philippines. Seen quite a few Mercedes, which is interesting because Mercedes has to be very expensive in the Philippines. I see Mercedes, and I see the number one brand in the Philippines, I believe, is Isuzu, and that holds true all over the world, is that Isuzu is probably the number one, had been the number one truck maker in the world, but I'm not sure if that's so true anymore. I guess Isuzu still exists, but they don't really exist too well here in the United States. I'm going to take this YOLO box in and experiment around with the dongle. See if it's usable for this weekend. I'd like to be able to run just pure 3 cameras out of this device. It might work with reliable hardwired internet. I don't like having to rely on the Wi-Fi based system, because no matter what, the Wi-Fi based system is herky-jerky. there's always some lag. And you know, if all else fails, I know that I can put this in my switcher box, run the output of the switcher into this and stream with this and use the switcher as a switcher and have a really good quality live stream, 4 sources in if I want. You only really need 2 or 3. Of course, a lot of it is just limited by the ability to set up how much time I want to spend, how much effort I need to put into it. You know, considering that it's a free gig and I have to design it to be economically viable. Is a free gig economically viable? Yeah, I mean, you know, like there needs to be a range of options, from the simplest to the most complex. The simplest, of course, would be a 1 camera shoot. Then the most simple would be to stream. But I'm trying to market this as an option, a portable option for people. It needs to be reliable, something that people can use, that they'd want to actually pay for or subscribe to get information out about their organizations. You know, live meetings, press conferences. I don't want to be like, you know, because a lot of this stuff, it's like the competition is always saying, well, you know, that's so low quality, why are you going for the, and it's because a lot of people just can't afford it, and therefore they don't, or they use an option like they hand a cell phone to one of their workers, and that's just so unreliable and janky. This allows me to stream to multiple platforms. You know, the question always is, of course, to get reliable internet that it can stream to. And there's different options. I can see what will happen if I get a SIM card. But then again, the word economical kicks in. If there's no money coming in and the SIM card ends up costing more complexity, MoFi is presenting what was causing me to have the stuttering, and all of a sudden it's not. It's a Chamber of Commerce where I was, and their amplifier was weak and in the bad part of the room. They said, oh yeah, it's all the way